If you study photography, cinematography, painting, drawing, writing, speaking, there's one thing that you will always encounter, which is storytelling. So I was a quiet kid. It was one of those things where, people would be like, oh, you're so quiet. Oh, you gotta watch out for the quiet ones. The thing about being quiet is you never really develop skills to express yourself. And in school, they don't really teach you how to communicate. Sure, we were required to do a few talks and you could take speech class if you wanted, but of course, being a quiet person, that didn't appeal to me at all. Not even in college, I avoided taking public speaking because I could take something else instead. I think I'm introverted, but I was also at various points shy. I wouldn't consider myself shy now. Obviously, I'm recording myself and putting it on the internet. There's a lot of types of communication that you aren't taught. And even though you're required to write a lot, there's a focus on things like grammatical correctness and, factual correctness, and not on, did you convey a message? Did you get the audience right? Did you use a tone of voice that was meaningful? In fact, they would do things that were counterproductive. They would teach us to do things like use one instead of I, or I don't know. Even in high school, they still focused on academic writing. Most of your writing in your life is not going to be academic writing. Most of the talking in your life is not going to be public speaking. It's not going to be, debates or defending a thesis or something like that. Most of the talking in your life is going to be to your friends and family, and there's important skills there to develop, and school doesn't teach those things. And if you're quiet, like I was, life doesn't teach you those things. You have to do something and fail to make mistakes to fix it, but I was so, especially with communication, for some reason I would avoid the opportunity to fail. More importantly, I never really saw the value in fixing this. I did have a few bad experiences that I remember. During 8th grade, we were required to do talks in front of class, and for some reason during that year, I would start getting really nervous when I had to talk in front of, even just a few people, to the point where, sometimes I would get the shakes or I would choke up. Once that happens, then you have that fear that that's going to happen again, which inevitably makes it happen again. And I've even had that happen as recently as a couple years ago. So it was a problem that didn't really go away. I went to college and I didn't study anything that made me have to talk in front of people. I didn't study anything that made me have to really communicate verbally at all. And there were things in college that helped me develop my writing communication, but they didn't really help me develop my verbal communication. And even then, writing communication in college is still all mostly very academic. They don't really teach you how to do most of the writing that you do, which is, personal writing, writing emails, writing, maybe even just writing blog posts or very informal persuasion or stories or things like that. You have to elect to learn those things. They don't suggest or convince you to learn those things. And then finally, I graduate and I go into the workplace and I discover that this is a problem. At first, I would still be the quiet guy at work. In fact, I would get comments like, oh, he works so hard, he's so quiet, he just focuses so hard on his work. Yeah, that's true, but it's also me avoiding any sort of confrontation or conflict or having to, argue against a certain idea or for a certain idea. And even by the time I got into the workplace, I thought that was fine. I was like, I'll just keep my head down, do my work will stand for itself, it's fine. But it wasn't fine. There came points where I wanted to convey new ideas or directions that I thought the company should go, and I was struggling to do that. And it was around this time, which is a few years ago now, that I realized I needed to fix my communication skills. But I didn't really know how to do that yet. I decided I would try to speak up more. I decided I would try to write more through email. I decided I would try to, take opportunities to speak to groups when they came up, but I wouldn't seek them out, that's for sure. Then for the next several years, I still struggled. I feel like I made improvements, especially to my writing, but I never really made big improvements to my speaking skills. About a year ago now, I decided to really focus on my writing skills because I felt like that was a direction I could go. I decided to start blogging, that way I could practice and develop them over time. And it seemed to start making some progress, but there's a long way to go for me. I still really wanted to develop my speaking skills, but I didn't really have any opportunities to speak in front of groups. You know, we would have meetings, but I can't just like jump in every meeting and say something to develop my skills, right? I can't just say whatever I want without coming across as that guy. So towards the end of last year, we had a kid, and for various reasons, we decided it would be better for me to stay home with the kid and take care of him than to do something like a nanny or daycare. So during this time, I was looking for projects to work on, and what eventually occurred to me was that this could be an opportunity for me to develop skills that I was lacking. And so that's why I decided to not just blog about my attempt to learn to draw, but to actually make a YouTube channel about it as well. Originally, I was just going to write about it, but I wanted to use this opportunity to conquer as many problems that I was seeing in my life as possible. So that's how this channel came to be. I wanted to teach myself to draw, which is something I'd been wanting to do for years. I wanted to improve my visual communication skills, which goes along with that. I wanted to improve my spoken communication skills. I wanted to improve my written communication skills. I also wanted to, learn to use a camera and make videos, which is part of visual communication skills, and get better at photography, which is also more visual communication skills. And all of these things can be summed up in one way. If you study photography, cinematography, painting, drawing, writing, speaking, there's one thing that you will always encounter, which is storytelling. So what I realized is I wanted to be a better storyteller. I think the important thing about this is that it's led me to sort of see and really understand that stories are how we understand our world. It's also how we communicate about our world. Our brain understands things in a very non-linear way. We can only learn about our world in a linear way because time is linear. And so we learn about our world through stories, through not only our own stories, but other people's stories. And being able to share our stories is probably the most important skill that a person can develop. You can have the best ideas in the world, but if you can't share them, it doesn't matter. So the only way to get better at telling stories is to tell a lot of stories. You have to iterate. You have to try, fail, and then try again. If you keep telling them and keep paying attention and trying to learn to make them better, they will get better.